Cameron Grace.
John Huntley. David Baker. John Chen. Tom Brokaw.
Case cracked after all these years. An arrest tonight in the JonBenet Ramsey murder mystery. High anxiety, a transatlantic flight diverted, luggage checked piece by piece, rumors of Al-Qaeda, a nation on the edge during a mid-air scare. Death spiral, a grim new report about what's happening in Iraq. Violence now killing more than 100 people a day, the worst since the war began. And now playing at an American original, Movies and Memories.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Substituting tonight, Campbel Brown.
Good evening. This has been a very busy and bizarre news day. It began this morning with a terror scare on a plane bound for Washington, D.C., and then late this afternoon, word first broke on MSNBC, a story that seemed to come out of nowhere. After 10 years and a trail that had gone cold, an arrest in Thailand in the JonBenet Ramsey murder case. A story that dominated the headlines when it happened and is doing so again tonight. That is where we begin. Here's NBC's Mike Taibbi now on what may be the big break in this high-profile case.
It was a story that, as they say, had all the elements. A pretty little girl with the melodic name JonBenet, a beauty pageant veteran already at age 6, found strangled, possibly sexually abused, and beaten to death in her own Boulder, Colorado home on the day after Christmas 10 years ago. Now in Bangkok, Thailand, an arrest.
My understanding is that this is a suspect in connection with the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. Not a witness, not a peripheral player, but a suspect.
The suspect was described as a 41-year-old second-grade teacher arrested by the Royal Thai Police at the request of the U.S. Justice Department. The warrant issued by the Boulder Police. It was the Ramseys themselves, John and Patsy, who were for long stretches described as the key suspects, persons under the umbrella of suspicion, investigators said. In books and in their rare interviews, both denied it.
Let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
Let me assure you that I did not kill JonBenet. I did not have anything to do with it. I love that child with my whole of my heart and soul.
And though Patsy Ramsey died of ovarian cancer this past June, she apparently had a clue about what was coming.
I'm told that Patsy Ramsey, who has since died, knew about this suspect and was waiting for the authorities to move forward on this suspect before she died.
The case was a sensation for years, really. As one investigator put it, this was the biggest child murder case since the death of the Lindbergh baby. Now, in a statement just released, John Ramsey said his late wife, Patsy, would have been as pleased as I am with today's developments 10 years after our daughter's murder. A sensational case that will now rule the headlines again, perhaps for the beginning of the end of the story. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, New York.
Now to that terror scare at 35,000 feet that set off a chain reaction on a United flight from London to Washington, D.C. A passenger's strange behavior prompted the pilot to declare an emergency. F-15 fighter jets were scrambled, and the United flight from London was diverted to Boston, where every single piece of luggage was then checked. This was not, after all, a terror attack at all, but nobody was taking any chances. Pete Williams has been tracking this story all day for us and joins us from the Department of Homeland Security with the very latest. Pete.
Campbell, good evening. Officials here say there's no hint of terrorism in this case, and they now say that that plane was never in any danger, but it nonetheless made for a tense morning. United Flight 923 from London to Washington's Dulles Airport suddenly diverted this morning to Boston. Federal officials say about 2 hours before it was due, the pilot radioed a security alert code when a 59-year-old Vermont woman on board became distraught and stood up, like a panic attack, one official says. She resisted a flight attendant and a passenger who tried to subdue her and was eventually restrained. On the way in, the flight was escorted by 2 jet fighters, alarming some passengers, though not all.
She seemed like somebody mentally ill. She was pacing up and down in the aeroplane.
Well, we knew what was going on, but it wasn't a big deal.
Luggage was rechecked and passengers were questioned post 9/11 precautions. The FAA says unruly passengers disrupt flights about 270 times a year, sometimes forcing planes to divert. And last December, federal air marshals shot and killed a mentally disturbed passenger in Miami who repeatedly claimed he had a bomb. A former airline security official says passengers can suddenly lose control.
When you have the human factor and people are in an enclosed area, and particularly at 40,000 feet, there are a lot of issues that stress them, and sometimes they manifest themselves in strange ways.
Since 9/11, planes bound here from overseas have been diverted at least 9 times for another reason, when a passenger's name appears to match one on the terror watch list. So far, the U.S. has been unable to get overseas airlines to provide passenger lists before the planes take off. But today, Homeland Security officials revealed that they'll make that early notice a firm requirement.
So if there's any security issues, we go ahead and handle that on the ground. And so it doesn't give anybody a potential opportunity to have any kind of a terrorist incident or security incident in flight.
Since last week's terror plot was foiled, airlines have been providing those early passenger lists for all flights here from London, but now this new rule will require all those lists for all flights here from anywhere overseas, Campbell.
Pete Williams in Washington tonight. Pete, thanks. In London, meanwhile, a judge has ruled that 23 suspects in custody in connection with the alleged British airline terror plot can be held without charges through next week. Grim news from Iraq tonight. This summer has been the deadliest period yet for civilians there. More than 110 were killed every single day in July by the violence between Sunnis and Shiites, according to figures from the new Iraqi government. And the killing continued today. Here's NBC's Tom Aspel tonight from Baghdad.
British troops fought in a firefight with Shiite gunmen in Basra today, as 3 car bombs in Baghdad kill at least 21 Iraqis. The day's violence bumped rising gas prices as the lead story on tonight's newscast. With more than 3,400 killed here in July, the deadliest month since the war began, the daily carnage has become numbing.
The main issue is civil war, and it's increasingly hard not to use that word. We have Sunnis and Shia deliberately and systematically attacking each other.
A new report from the United Nations says at least 17,000 Iraqis have been killed here in the past 7 months. And though the new Iraqi government has deployed a new security force in Baghdad made up of 40,000 U.S. and Iraqi troops, it may not be strong enough to prevent a civil war. And today, a new problem. The U.S. military says Al-Qaeda may be developing a new strategy.
Al-Qaeda in Iraq wants to present itself as a legitimate organization. It is striving to increase its operational power by building a political base with a military wing.
Al-Qaeda might be trying to exploit Iraqi anger over high unemployment, just as Hezbollah did in Lebanon. Iraqis fear all-out civil war might lead to the partition of their country, which could trigger an even wider conflict in the region. Tom Aspel, NBC News, Baghdad.
The Bush administration continues to insist publicly that Iraq is not spiraling down into civil war. But behind the scenes, there is serious concern about what is happening on the ground and what to do about it. NBC's chief White House correspondent David Gregory is at the White House tonight. And David, what are you hearing?
Well, Campbell, as you say, there is that frustration, but Bush advisors tonight deny that the president is publicly expressing frustration with the Iraqi government and Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, who he's been supportive of, certainly. Nevertheless, privately, nobody's sugarcoating the problem. That is that Maliki's first effort to get security in Baghdad under control flatly didn't work. Now more U.S. troops are being deployed to the capital to prevent civil war. Officials say the president himself has pressured the Maliki government to take some tough stands, particularly against Shia militias aligned with Maliki's party, make some tough political decisions. They recognize that time is not on their side. There's great pressure to bring troops back to the United States, bring them back home. And as one aide said, the Maliki government has a limited window of opportunity to show some real progress. There's also political pressure on this White House at a time when it says that it's adapting the strategy in the war to win. They recognize they've got to show some progress and soon as well. Campbell?
All right, David. David Gregory at the White House for us tonight. And now to the news from here in New York tonight. The release of more 9/11 emergency recordings from September 11th, 2001. As NBC's Dawn Fratangelo tells us, the recently discovered tapes, mostly of firefighters talking to their own dispatchers, once again bring back the chaos and the horror of that day.
2 World Trade Center on the 97th floor. Heavy smoke. Okay, sir, please try to keep calm. We'll send somebody up there immediately.
The calls once again highlight the chaos and confusion of that day and the despair, like that of Melissa Doy, trapped on the 83rd floor.
Hold on 1 second, please.
I'm going to die, aren't I?
No.
I'm going to die.
Ma'am, say your prayers. And we're going to think positive because you got to help each other get off the floor.
A portion of Doy's recording was played at the trial of Zacharias Moussaoui. This time, the entire 24-minute conversation was released. The dispatcher staying on the line even after Doy loses consciousness.
Melissa, you're going to be fine. They're going to come get you. Oh, my God.
Among those trying to get there, Fire Chief Dennis Devlin.
Chief Devlin, I got to get a rundown of the companies. We're in a state of confusion. All right.
He, like so many first responders, had trouble communicating.
Some because we have no cell phone service anywhere because of the disaster.
Okay.
I need you to call Division 3.
Division 3.
And have the messenger van bring all the additional handy-talkies he can.
Captain Patty Brown was able to report he was on the 35th floor, trying to get people out.
There's numerous civilians in all stairwells, numerous burn injuries are coming down. I'm trying to send them down first. Apparently, it's above the 75th floor. I don't know if they got there yet, okay?
Okay.
It's a free truck, and we're still heading up, all right?
Okay.
Brown and Devlin were among 343 firefighters and paramedics killed on September 11th. Family members who fought for the release of the tape say they provide missing links and believe New York and other cities can only learn from the failures of that day. A message echoed today by retired firefighter Al Fuentes, who was trapped in the rubble of the World Trade Center.
I was there. I was part of it. I made my mistakes. I'm willing to look in the mirror. I'm willing to learn. I hope we are.
5 years later, voices from the 11th, chaotic, confused, and consoling.
Keep praying, and you'll be in there soon. You're going to be fine.
Still offering lessons in this new world of terror. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News, New York.
When NBC Nightly News continues on this Wednesday evening, in depth, the cost of war. We will have the latest from Lebanon tonight as refugees return to try to rebuild their homes and their lives. And later, a teenager in the battle of his life to control his own cancer treatment and the outcome in court today. NBC News in depth tonight, the cost of war. As Israel starts to hand over areas of southern Lebanon to a multinational UN peacekeeping force, Lebanese civilians are continuing to return home tonight, only to find there's nothing there, including money for rebuilding. Here's NBC's Martin Savage in depth.
The Hussein family dig through what's left of their 4-bedroom Beirut apartment. Israeli airstrikes destroyed what Ali Hussein says was a palace. The kids told me, "Daddy, don't be sad, don't be angry. We can replace it," he says. In the southern suburbs of Beirut alone, it is estimated that there are 300 buildings that have been destroyed. Most of them look just like this, block after block, street after street. No part of Lebanon was spared. Today they began filling the bomb craters at the Beirut airport. But hundreds of miles of roadways are unusable. 80 to 90% of the bridges south of Beirut impassable. And up to 30% of the infrastructure in the south wiped out. The initial damage estimate? $3.5 billion.
I've never seen a war like this, and the intensity of firepower, intensity of destruction.
Borrowing to rebuild isn't easy. Lebanon was already $40 billion in debt from reconstruction after its 15-year civil war.
The International Monetary Fund, the world banking system, major countries are going to have to come together and help Lebanon figure out a way of meeting its financial burdens and recovering from this war.
If Lebanon was hoping for some sort of Marshall Plan, no one here has heard of it. Another problem? One of the country's biggest sources of income, tourism, is in shell shock, as once crowded beaches and restaurants sit empty. And while the Lebanese government struggles, Hezbollah acts. Speaking on TV, the leader of Hezbollah promised the tens of thousands of people made homeless he will pay their rent for 1 year, rebuild their apartments, even furnish them. Ali Hussein says he plans to sign up, ignoring it was Hezbollah which triggered the war that destroyed his home in the first place. Martin Savage, NBC News, Beirut.
Up next on Nightly News, a teenager in court today fighting the battle of his life, and later spending the evening enjoying a vanishing piece of Americana, the drive-in. Now to the story of a 16-year-old who has been fighting two wrenching battles. One, a battle with cancer, the other, a legal battle over how his illness should be treated. Here's NBC's Chip Reed.
In Virginia today, a small victory over cancer achieved not in a hospital room, but in a courtroom.
Everything we fought for, everything that we wanted to ever have, we've won.
What 16-year-old Abraham Cherrick's won is the right to fight his cancer his way. A year ago, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, cancer of the lymph nodes. But he says 3 months of chemotherapy left him feeling so weak and debilitated that when doctors recommended another round, he said no.
The chemo, the tests, you know, it's just too much for me.
With the support of his parents, he turned to the Hoxsey Herbal System, an alternative cancer treatment based in Mexico. There, he learned how to mix ingredients like roots, bark, and clover.
It's a diet of all natural, organic foods and nuts. I feel an incredible difference in my body. I feel more alive.
But the treatment is banned in the U.S., and the American Cancer Society says there's no scientific evidence that the Hoxsey Herbal treatment is effective in treating cancer. Concerned county social workers urged a judge to intervene in the case. He did, and ordered Cherrick's to undergo more chemotherapy and accused his parents of medical neglect. But today, all that was erased as the parties reached a compromise. Cherrick's can continue with the herbal therapy, but must be treated by a certified cancer doctor. And while he won't have to endure more chemotherapy, radiation is still a possibility.
He hasn't given up his magic potions that he and his family decided they want to take, but at the end of the day, it's not going to interfere with standard medical treatment.
Now with the case out of the courtroom, everyone can focus on saving a young life. Chip Reed, NBC News, Washington.
On Wall Street today, a report showing consumer inflation was fairly tame cheered investors who sent stocks sharply higher for the second straight day. The Dow was up almost 97 points. The Nasdaq gained 34.5 points on the day. A group of scientists and historians called the International Astronomical Union announced an earth-shattering decision today. They are proposing a new definition of the word planet that would remake our solar system. Instead of the 9 planets we all grew up with, there would be 12. The 3 new planets would have the sort of junior varsity status, and Pluto, which has been on the is it a planet or not bubble for a while now, would keep its planet status. Not everybody agrees with the new way of looking at things, including the folks who make textbooks, posters, and space toys. The proposal will be voted on at the end of the month. And I'll be right back with a vanishing summertime pleasure, the drive-in movie. There was a time when a summer night like this one meant watching a night, or with the family, watching the stars, under the stars, on the silver screen at the drive-in. Back in the 1950s, America had about 4,000 drive-in movie theaters. Well, today they're all but a memory. Only a few hundred are still in business. NBC's Roger O'Neill paid a visit to one old world survivor just outside of Lexington, Virginia.
Remember real butter on popcorn, snow cones drenched with syrup, and hamburgers which tasted like, well, hamburgers?
It's showtime.
Remember the drive-in?
Hey, it's a beautiful night for the movies here at Hall's Drive-In, and we're glad you're here.
Here is Lexington, Virginia, where time on a summer weekend takes a back seat to a double feature.
This is a family tradition.
A tradition more than 3,000 American towns have lost since the 1980s as land values and entertainment tastes changed. But when Hall's Drive-In closed, this town focused on saving it.
It's like sitting on the front porch.
Because the view for Elise and Eric Sheffield was too good to lose.
Drive-ins are a special place. There's something magical that happens here.
It's not even really about the movie, because they're coming for something else, which is time to be with the people they love.
With mostly $5 and $10 donations, Frank Kaliza is still stringing the 35mm film through the antique projector.
So if something breaks down, it's baling wire and a string. Well, sometimes it's paper clips, duct tape.
Hall's Drive-In is now community-owned and open. Showing PG movies and charging just $5, kids are free, it's not unusual to get a full house.
It's a family atmosphere, you know, and it's affordable.
If you're old enough to remember drive-ins, you remember how you tried to get in sometimes.
in the trunk of your buddy's car.
Oh, that hurts.
And that still happens today. Some things never change. Whether it's an antique car club or a pink Cadillac, the drive-in strikes a nostalgic chord of a slower, simpler, safer world. As one said, this is the way it should be. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Lexington, Virginia.
And that is our broadcast for this Wednesday night. Thank you for being with us. I'm Campbell Brown. We'll look for you right back here tomorrow night. Have a good night.